Headline Humboldt. I'm James Faulk. Thanks for joining us. Public health officials this week were somber in reporting that as of this moment, Humboldt County is worst in the state in the battle against COVID-19. We're ranked dead last in both case and positivity rates, even as we approach the June 15th statewide reopening. For much of this pandemic, Humboldt has been relatively lucky in the scale and breadth of its infections, but as the rest of the state improves due to vaccinations and other efforts, our county seems to now be lagging behind the overall trend. Officials were not shy this week about appealing directly to those who have yet to be vaccinated. Given the lifting of public health restrictions that will happen in June, vaccinating as many folks as possible is the one significant weapon we'll have in fighting off COVID. Public Health Officer Hoffman challenged the public to reach 75% of the public having had at least one shot by June 15th. Right now, we're at 60%. 3rd District Supervisor Mike Wilson similarly implored those who won't vaccinate to be sensitive to the health needs of everyone else. If you're not going to get vaccinated, avoid public gatherings and other situations where you might inadvertently spread the infection. We'll have more from our local health officials in a bit. Of course, COVID isn't the only disease on the mind of many this week. An infection that's killing salmon in the Klamath River, spread because of low water levels and high temperatures, has been a point of major contention in recent weeks as local tribes, including the Yurok, sound the alarm. The tribes, of course, are culturally tied to the presence of the salmon in the Klamath River, and they also depend on the fish for sustenance and basic economics. In a drought year, when every drop of water becomes precious, it's not a surprise that farmers upriver also clamor for water and stake a claim to that limited resource. Tonight we hear from a member of the Yurok Tribal Council on what the tribe is facing, how the fish are faring, and what possible solutions may be in the offing. It's necessary, I believe, to note that rising temperatures throughout the globe will only make these types of battles against disease and climate more common than ever. Thus, this most recent water emergency may well form a kind of script for how battles of the future will unfold. It'll do us all a service now and then to be clear about our priorities and the values that shape us as a community when choosing between disparate sides. Now, the interview. Frank Myers, the Yurok Tribal Vice Chairman, has been on the front lines in the battle for Klamath River water for years as a leader and representative of his community. He joins us now. Welcome.
Thank you. Ayukwe.
Are you there? Okay. So let's just talk about let's give an overview for the viewers. What is the current crisis on the Klamath River involving, the drought?
Right now, we're seeing a catastrophic juvenile fish kill on the Yurok reservation. We have staggering numbers of mortality for our juveniles that we're seeing in our rotary screw traps. It's absolutely the worst case scenario for our people to see our juveniles dying in such a way with no relief to come. We know that we've already passed the point for fleshing flows. We already have been told there's not adequate water supplies for dilution flows. So it's quite a dire position that we're looking at in a situation that's unfolding in front of us that we're monitoring in real time.
Yeah, we have a little bit of videotape of, I think, someone from the tribe going out and testing fish for the presence of, is it a bacteria or what is it exactly that they're catching?
It is a virus, and you'll see here in the film, the Yurok tribe works with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to help monitor fish conditions on the river. You'll see in the background there a rotary screw trap. The rotary screw trap gets a sample of the flow coming down the river. From that flow, we'll get samples of juveniles floating down the river as well. We take samples of those juveniles to see what the overall fish health conditions are in the river based on what our catch is, and then extrapolate what the overall fish health of the entire river is. Here you see fisheries technician Gilbert Myers and Jamie Holt, who are some long-standing fisheries technicians with the tribe. Jamie's been with the tribe for almost 20 years doing fisheries research on fish health. They go out every day and monitor what their catch is, collect samples from the fish, deliver it to our fish health lab, as well as report findings back to agency and tribal folk alike. When they're out, they take a multitude of samples. Over the past 2 decades, the Yurok tribe has spent millions of dollars developing a very robust scientific infrastructure fisheries program, one of the largest fisheries programs in California, only to the state of California. Our trial members are dedicated scientific technicians who take great pride and care in doing their monitoring, as you see here, looking at river conditions every single day to try to provide the best available science to leaders to make good decisions. Unfortunately, what we're seeing this year is what you're seeing on the screen. Fish mortality, juvenile fish mortality. Every season we see a low flow. Like this year, we start to see this happen. You have, additional debris coming down along with low temperatures and high spore counts of sea Shasta really creates a habitat that's inhospitable for salmon and for juvenile baby Chinook, like you could see there. Yeah. This was from one of the days where the mortality rate was actually getting lower. We had seen much higher catches from there. And I think one thing that you need to be clear is that you see this video, the screw trap really only samples a small percentage of the river itself. And so when you think about what a small percentage of the river we sample and the high amount of mortalities we're receiving, it's pretty catastrophic to families, as we're seeing here, who depend on the river, who care for the river, who go to the river for their spiritual well-being and overall health. To see these mortalities, it's devastating to us for 2 reasons. One, we see the amount of mortality rate we're seeing in such high numbers. We also know that this doesn't end this year. These fish were destined to return. These fish were supposed to come back and feed our families. We know that's not going to happen. We're seeing 2 kind of catastrophes play out. One this year with our juvenile fish kill, and in 3 years when those fish are supposed to return and they don't, we're going to suffer a second time then as well.
What are we talk about a drought. Can you give us a sense of the scope of that drought? I mean, have you, I assume the tribe, you have experience throughout your life, and then also the fisheries department, I imagine you track those sorts of things. Where does this rank in terms of severity?
It's one of the second or third highest that we've seen as far as drought conditions. Obviously, as indigenous people of these lands, we have stories that go back to the beginning of time, since time immemorial. We know of other natural events, and I'll tell you from our knowledge of our history, something like this is still unprecedented. Yeah. I think one of the things that's important that we be honest with ourselves when we're describing years like this year. This is climate change. This is the new climate. We've seen it coming. We've been tracking. We will call it a drought until it happens again and again. And I think the sooner that we are honest with ourselves about the climate we're looking at, the better off we're going to be. This is the second year we've had low flows, terribly low flows, historically low flows. We've had some of the worst low flows on record in the last 5 years.
Yeah. Typically it seems like this is portrayed as a battle between farmers and fishermen and the tribes. No one's getting any water at this point, isn't that right?
No, that's sad, but unfortunately true. We're all suffering in the basin. There's not adequate lake levels for Klamath tribe, Cockatoo, Truong. There's not any flows going to upper basin ag. Project irrigators are being shut off. There's no water in the A canal. There's no water for dilution or flushing flows for our baby salmon or for our membership. This truly is being felt across the basin. And I think one of the things that's extremely important for us to do now is to not go back to our corners and fight. but really to come together and look at each other as a whole community. This problem can only be solved when our leaders stand with each other and look at the basin as one community.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the next step for the tribe in terms of trying to get some relief for the fish and for your community? I mean, obviously you can't get the flush water that you've requested, which would be released from the dam into the river that would cool things down. Are there steps you can take to mitigate the issues absent that kind of release?
I hate to use the word mitigate because there's no real way to mitigate the psychological, cultural impact that this is having on our people.
Yeah.
But we are working hard with our partners up and down the basin to try to bring some relief to our families and to our communities. Along with the low flows and the juvenile fish mortality we're seeing now, we will also hit another blow. Our annual harvest for adult Chinook this year is a little over 6,000 fish. With tribal membership of over 6,500, that means we're allocated less than one fish per person. Our tribal members are gravely concerned with even that amount of harvest and whether or not we should even be harvesting. We are looking at layers of impact to our tribal communities. As a tribal leader myself, I feel it is my urgent duty to try to do as much as I can to bring relief to our communities and our families up and down the basin. We talk to our partners in ag and other tribes. We know this devastation is being felt throughout the entire basin. And I can tell you, we are all very concerned and very dedicated to trying to do whatever we can to bring together an equitable relief bill for our communities here in the basin, which is really the only thing we can do at this point.
I remember that there was a fish kill in prior years. You had corrected me earlier, it was 2002. I thought it was 2006, but that was a massive fish die-off, and horrified people all over the United States. What is the difference between then and now? Is this a different illness, or how can we compare and contrast the two?
It's very similar conditions that were playing out for the adult fish kill in 2002 under the very similar circumstances. Sea Shasta, as well as high water temperature, were the main culprits for the adult fish kill. I think one thing that's extremely difficult about watching a juvenile fish kill is not only seeing the fish kill unfold before you now, but to know the impacts it's going to have in years to come. This is the beginning of their life cycle. They still have to go out to the ocean. They still have to compete. They still fall prey. They have a long life ahead of them. It's hard to calculate the impacts this is going to have. The 2002 fish kill was absolutely devastating, and the imagery for some of us who were out there lasts a lifetime. And I will always remember being on the river and seeing the fish and smelling it and hearing the sorrow of my community members. It was a changing point in my life and for a lot of tribal members who then dedicated themselves to the fight to restore our river and to restore our balance.
Can you just a little bit, the question may sound a little bit intrusive, but I was wondering if you could sort of describe for the general audience what the salmon and the river mean to your community.
It's important to remember that we as Indigenous people have lived within this world for tens of thousands of years. We have an intricate knowledge of the landscape around us. One of the core beliefs, the core teaches that we have as a tribe is very simply that without the salmon, our way of life will be no more. When we look at what that means and how we apply that, we see that the salmon are the basis for our ecology here in the Klamath Basin. And if the salmon fail, if they go away, if they go extinct, it in fact means our way of life goes extinct as well. Our purpose here on Earth will be no more, and the collapse of the entire basin will be to follow. These are not stories as much as they are a collection of observed data over time, passed down through generations, through oral stories and traditions. We know that these are true statements. We know that the rest of our oral history has been backed up by Western science. There is no reason for us to believe that this story isn't correct and true as well.
Yeah. One of the things that I felt like I needed to ask, there's been a lot of work on dam removal on the Klamath, and I know that there has been some efforts made to get an agreement to forge that future. Does this endanger that at all, or how does this affect those efforts, and would that potentially help to prevent this kind of thing from happening again?
Absolutely, that's a fantastic question. I think, if anything, this has really highlighted the severe need we have to move forward with dam removal. And it really has, I think, impacted our partnerships, our leaders in the state, Governor Newsom, as well as Oregon Governor Brown. We all feel this extra sense of urgency that we need to push harder now than ever before. Dam removal is slated for 2023. That seems so far off now, and the need to push to get that as done as soon as possible. Our lives depend on it.
Well, I'd like to thank you for joining us, and hopefully we can have you back at some point in the future to talk about this again. I think it's a very, very important issue.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Amen. We'll be right back after this short break.
He waged jihad in Iraq and Syria, accused of terror and torture.
You're a wanted man. There's a $10 million price tag on your head.
The former al-Qaeda commander says he's changed. Speaking to a Western reporter for the first time.
How is it that somebody is going to want to trust you?
Frontline investigates the jihadist.
The sunken warship of a king.
We've never seen anything else like this archaeologically.
From 500 years ago. What secrets did it carry?
We have found a figurehead.
It's amazing.
Possibly the oldest handgun found on a shipwreck.
Why did it sink? And did its design shift the tides of history?
It's a statement of power. It's floating propaganda.
The ship that changed the world on Nova.
As Humboldt County officials announced this week that Humboldt County has reached the bottom of the statistical barrel in terms of COVID, the state stepped up its efforts to make vaccinations even more attractive. The California Department of Public Health this week introduced Vax for the Win, a campaign to provide cash incentives to state residents who get fully vaccinated. The state is offering $50 gift cards to the next 2 million state residents who get fully vaccinated. Gift cards will be distributed digitally following completion of a 2-dose series or after receiving a single-dose vaccine. Meanwhile, all Californians who have received at least 1 dose of a COVID-19 vaccine will be entered into a drawing for cash prizes up to $1.5 million. This week, Public Health Officer Ian Hoffman reiterated how vital it will be for local residents to get themselves vaccinated.
We feel very confident that we will not see that level of hospital capacity surge, and that's why we are opening up society again. Despite the fact that we don't have vaccination rates that are high enough to protect everyone, we have enough vaccine to offer to those who are willing to accept it. So what does vaccination do for the individual? It protects them against severe disease. It protects them against hospitalization. It protects them against death. And I think that's really important for us to keep in mind, because what we're still seeing right now is in the unvaccinated population, the reason we're having the numbers that we're having is because they're still getting sick and they're still spreading this, and we're still seeing hospitalization. So I don't expect that to change anytime in the coming months unless we see a dramatic change in our vaccination rate. We have about 60% of our eligible population who've got at least 1 shot. So that's actually really good. We're in a good spot for what we're looking at nationwide, what we're looking at with the rest of California. But to feel safe and confident, we still need more. We want to try to continue to protect the way we did for the last year, but not with the same measures. We don't want to continue to lock down all of society, for any longer. We know the importance of getting back to normal. So the only tool we have left is really vaccination. And so I'd like to put out a call to Humboldt County to try to get to 75% vaccination of the eligible population by June 15th. We have 3 more weeks to go, and we have plenty of vaccine in Humboldt County. And really, like Supervisor Wilson, want to urge everyone to reach out, try to overcome those barriers, whatever they be, whether it's transportation barrier, an economic barrier, a knowledge barrier, questions about the vaccine, a medical concern. Reach out to your doctor, reach out to the JIC, look for information, and try to find a vaccine clinic before June 15th, because those protections that have been protecting us, the unvaccinated up until that point, are going to go away.
Supervisor Mike Wilson spoke directly to those most resistant to the vaccine and tried to appeal to their sense of community.
We really need to move towards a higher percentage of our population to be vaccinated if we really want to be safe and not have the impacts that we've been seeing. Our numbers are not good, and we're moving into a place where they're going to become even more dangerous for unvaccinated people. I just implore everybody to understand that it's not just for the safety of oneself to become vaccinated, it's for the safety of others. If you are still choosing to be unvaccinated, please take that into account in how you move through the community. Please mask, please do not engage in or encourage gatherings, at least with the participation of yourselves that are unvaccinated. It is causing real stress in the community with these numbers. It's putting people in the hospital. It's closing businesses. It's impacting our abilities to open up in so many ways, and it's impacting people who can't get vaccinated, children who can't get vaccinated, people who can't get vaccinated for medical reasons. So I implore anyone who is unvaccinated, please take the personal responsibility seriously. Please reach out to, if the issue is a medical one in terms of your information, if you feel like you aren't receiving good or have good medical information, please reach out to your provider, your doctor, the place you would actually go to get medical information. I'm asking folks to please really consider helping us move to the next level. Thanks.
In this week's Community Conversation, we meet one of the heroes of our community spaces, Eureka Parks Maintenance Supervisor, Greg Ausburn.
Good afternoon, I'm Greg Ausburn. I'm the Parks Maintenance Supervisor for the City of Eureka. We're responsible for about 13 parks, the dog park, roughly 1,800 to 2,000 street trees, and about a couple hundred, 300 acres of green space. If it's inside the park, we do everything. We mow, we clean the bathrooms, we stock the bathrooms, we paint, we take care of graffiti, we take care of safety issues with playground equipment. We got 2,000 street trees roughly downtown. We also take care of the parking lots downtown. It's a lot for a small staff, but I think we do pretty well. I've worked for the city about 5.5 years now. I started in December, and so this December will be 6 years. I really like working for the city. I have, my chain of command. They give me a lot of support, and that's very helpful trying to maintain these parks. I'm originally from Georgia. My wife is from McKinleyville. She wanted to move back, so we decided we'd move back here. I miss Georgia, but I like this place. There's a lot of things going on with the parks. We have quite a few renovations going on. We've been lucky enough to secure a couple of grants. Some upgrades that are going on here at Sequoia Park. We have the new space for the 2 to 5 year olds that should be completed here in a couple of weeks. There's going to be some other upgrades in 3 phases that's going to take place here. There's going to be some new restrooms and some new play areas for the kids, so I'm looking forward to that and seeing the people enjoy it. Some of our other upgrades has been Klamath Park, which is up by the Humboldt County Library, and there's some other grants that we're applying for 2030. There's going to be some new playground equipment installed over at Cooper. We're applying for a grant there as well. And then down along Waterfront Drive, Halverson's, the park down there right beside Sacco, we're looking at installing some new playground equipment down there as well. One of my favorite parks is Sequoia Park. Even though it's in the city, you can come in here and you can almost get kind of lost within the trees and all the nature that's out here. It's very beautiful. I'm not from here, but it's a very beautiful park, probably one of the prettiest ones I've ever seen in my life. We do have some volunteer programs with COVID. We cut that back a little bit, but you can see, you can talk to Lisa or Jeff down at the Adorney Center if you're interested in volunteering. And then there's obviously, as always, some forms and stuff that we have to complete and some rules that we have to go over, but hopefully soon we'll start some of those volunteer programs back. One of the most rewarding parts of my job is probably seeing people enjoy the parks. You know, I like seeing the kids play and the people just using the parks for appropriate use, and this probably relieves a little bit of stress for them, and there's, you know, with 13 parks in the city that we're responsible for, that there's a lot of, you know, places for people to go and relax and enjoy their day.
Well, this is Memorial Day weekend, so hopefully he'll get some satisfaction watching people get out in the sun and play in Eureka's parks. Real quick before we go, we'd like to congratulate the Humboldt County Teen Court, which will be celebrating its 20th anniversary on June 4th. A virtual anniversary event will be held on Zoom. For more information, you can visit their website or their Facebook page, facebook.com/HCTeenCourt. Real quick, we can look at our COVID graphic and see how we're faring in terms of the ongoing battle against COVID. So far, we have 54,539 people fully vaccinated. That's 40% of the population, while 66,132 have been partially vaccinated. Remember, if you haven't gotten your vaccination yet, you can go to myturn.ca.gov to get your appointment and get your shot. Do it for you, do it for the community, do it for everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you're not vaccinated, get there. Stay tuned. Stay informed.